Hi, welcome to the morning meeting. We're gonna get started. I'm gonna read us a poem. Um, Full duty of children. Um, a child should always say what's true and speak when he is spoken to, and behave merrily at table. At table, at least as far as he is able. That's the poem. I'm gonna be right back. Let's see. Yeah. Sorry about that. So we're gonna do some history now. Okay. America first. The Leaf the Lucky. The Leaf was a bold um, Norseman and was called Lucky because he came safely through so many dangers. He was the bravest seaman of his race, and the sailors believed that whatsoever boat carried him would come safely into port, no matter how fierce the storm. When voyagers from the far seas brought word to Iceland that fair lands covered with forests lay to the west, for they had seen them. Lucky called for 35 strong and true men. Okay, that's let us sail to this country and get wood for our ships, and perhaps gold and silver to sell to the kings of Europe. Okay. He said the men come forward and the ship set sail. In the summer they went by way for Greenland, where they stopped for more news of the strange lands, and then sailed southwest for many days. The first place they saw was a land of ice and mountains. This was probably Newfoundland. Then they reached a level country covered with trees. This was probably Nova uh, Satula. I don't know how to say that word. Um, Still sailing onward, the little ships with their brave crews come to a beautiful country, aboarding in trees, grass, and flowers. Here they landed and carried all their baggage ashore with them. The place was so beautiful they received to spend the winter there and at once set about building houses. This was probably somewhere in Rhode Island when the Norsemen had built their houses. Leif said to his men, "Let us explore the land." Some of us said to his men that, sorry, will stay to guard the houses, and the rest will find out what there is to see. So they set forth unto the neighborhood. So they come upon an avalanche of hours uh, hanging from the trees and covered with fruit. Leif was delighted and at once named the country Finland, or, or the land of Finlands. So they gathered grapes and cut wood for their ships and built more houses and settled down to spend the winter in this delightful spot. The cold came on, but the Norsemen did not mind it, for they had plenty of food and great fires, besides which they were accustomed to the cold weather. In the spring they landed their ships with timber and sailed for home. Here they uncovered their marvelous story of the new land. Leif offered his ship to his brother Thorwald and told him he might go and spend a winter in Finland. So Thor uh, pleaded himself out and started for the new country, but he was not as lucky as his brother. He found the homes that had been built by these who had been before him, that had been built by these who had been before him. Oh, I'm sorry. But the Indians attacked his party one night and killed so with a poison arrow. Okay. He was buried on the shore, and his man set sail for home as soon as the weather allowed them to leave. Clothed in armor, was found buried in the earth at the head of Narragansett Bay. No one knew who it was, but we have every reason to believe that it was the remains of the brave old dinosaur warrior, um, his brother, Lore, or maybe of one of his followers. At any rate, the skeleton in armor has been the subject of much remains and early, I don't know what, in the transactions of the narratives have been handed down to us as says in the writing of the savoring Icelanders. Narbuck. Lucia looks into a wardrobe. Once there were 4 children. His names were Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. This story is about something that happened to them when they were sent away from London during the war because of the air burdens. They were sent to the house of an old professor who lived in the heart of the country, 10 miles from the nearest railway station and 2 miles from the nearest post office. He had no wife. He and he lived in a very large house with a housekeeper called Mrs. Macready and three servants. Their names were Margaret and Betty, but they do not come in the story much. He himself was a very old man with shaggy white hair, with grew over most of his face as well as on his head, and they licked him almost at once. But on the first evening when he came out to meet them at the front door, he was I'm just gonna stretch once in a while. Um, so odd looking that Lucy youngest, was a little afraid of him, and then who was the next youngest, wanted to laugh and had to keep on pretending he was blowing his nose to hide it. As soon as they had said goodnight to the professor and gone upstairs, on the first night, the boys um, came out to the girls' room and they all talked it over. We've fallen on our feet, and no mistake, said Peter. This is going to be perfectly I don't know that word. Um, that old chip chap will let us do anything we like. I'd like his an old dear, said Susan. Oh, come off it, said Emmett, um, who was tired and pretending not to be tired, but always made him dead tempered. Don't go on taking like that. Like what? Said Susan. And anyway, it's time. You were in bed trying to talk to mother and then and who are you say when I'm to go to bed. Good to to bed with yourself? Hadn't we all better go to bed? Said Lucy. There is sure to be a road if you're heard taking here. No, there. Well, said Peter, I'll tell you, this is the sort of house where no one's going to mind. What we do anyway, they won't hear us. It's about 10 minutes walking from here down to the dining room, and any open upstairs passages in between. What's that noise? Said Lucy steadily. It was a far longer house than had ever been before. And the thought of all these long passages and rows of the doors leading to empty rooms was beginning to make her feel a little creepy. It's only a bird, silly, and it's owls, said Peter. This is going to be a wonderful place for birds. I shall go to bed now. I say, let's go and explore tomorrow. You might find everything in this place like this. Did you see these mountains as we come along? In the woods, there might be eagles. There might be stages, strategy. I don't know. There will be hawks, badgers, said Lucy. The foxes said Edmund. Rabbits said Susan. But when next morning came, there was a steady rain falling. So thick that when you looked out of the window, you could see neither the mountains or nor the woods or even the stream in the garden. Of course, it would be raining, and they had just finished their breakfast with the professor, and we're upstairs in the room he has set apart for them, a long row room with two windows looking out in one direction and to another. Do stuff, grumbling Ed and Susan. 10 to 1. They're up in an hour or so, and in the one, it'll clear up in an hour. So, and in the meantime, we're pretty well off. There's a wordless and lots of books. Not far from me, said Peter. Sorry, guys. It's my neck. I'm going to explore in the house. Everyone agreed to this, and that was how the adventures began. It was the sort of house that you ever seem to come to the end of, and it was full of unexpected things. The first few doors they had expected they would, but soon they came to a very long room full of pictures, and there they found a suit of armor, and after that was a room all hanging with green, with a harp in one corner. And then came up 3 steps down and 5 steps up, and then a kind of little stairs hall and a door that lead out into a balcony, and then a whole series of rooms that led into each other and were littered with books, most of them very old books, and some bigger than a Bible church in a church. And shortly after that, they looked into a room that was quite empty except for one big wardrobe was quite empty except for one big wardrobe. The sword quite that has a looking glass in the door. There was nothing else in the room at all except a dim blue bottle on the windowsill. Nothing there, said Peter, and they all shrugged, I don't know, out, and all expect Lizzie. She said behind because she thought it would be worthwhile trying the door of the wardrobe, even though she felt almost sure that it would be locked. To her surprise, trying the door of the wardrobe, even though she uh, felt sure that it would be locked. To her surprise, it opened quite easily, and two month-olds dropped out. Looking into inside, she saw several coats hanging up, mostly long fur coats. There was nothing Lucy looked so much as the smell and feel of fur. She immediately stepped into the wardrobe and got in among the coats and rubbed her face against them, leaving the door open, of course, because she knew that it was very foolish to shut oneself into any wardrobe. As soon as she went further in and found that were oh okay and found that there was a second row of coats hanging up behind the first one. It was almost quite dark in there, and she kept her arms stretched out in front of her so as not to bump her face into the back of the wardrobe. She took a step further in, then two or three steps, always expecting to feel woodwork against the tips of her fingers, but she could not feel it. This must be a simply enormous wardrobe, thought Lucy, going till further in and pushing the soft folds of the coats aside to make room for her. Then she noticed that there was something crunching under her feet. I wonder this is that more balls she thought, stomping down to feel it with her hand, but instead of feeling the hard, smooth wood of the floor of the wardrobe, she felt something soft and powdery and extremely cold. This is very weird, I guess, she said, and went on a step or two further. Next moment, she found that what was rubbing against her face and hands was no longer soft fur, but something hard and rough, and even prickly. Why it is just like branches of trees, except Lucy, and then she saw that there was a light ahead of her, not a few inches away, where the back of the wardrobe, I don't know that one, to have been but a long way off, something cold and southward was falling on her. A moment later, she found that she was standing in the middle of a wood at night time with in the middle of snow under her feet and the snowflakes falling through the air. Lucy felt a little frightened, but she felt very and excited as well. She looked back over her shoulder, and there between the dark uh, tree trunks, she could still see the open doorway of the wardrobe and even catch a glimpse of the empty room from which she had sent out. She had, of course, left the door open, for she knew that it is a very silly thing to shout oneself into a wardrobe. Um, it seemed to be still daylight there. I can always get back if anything goes wrong, thought Lucy. She began to walk forward over the snow and through the wood toward the other light. In about 10 minutes, she reached it and found it was a lamppost. As she stood looking at it, wondering why there was a lamppost in the middle of the wood, you know, wondering what to do next, she heard a pitter, a patter, I know, a pitter patter of feet coming toward her. As soon after that, a very strange person stepped out of among the trees into the light of the lamppost. He was only a taller than Lucy herself. Oh. And he cried over to his head an umbrella white with snow from the wrist upward. He was like a man, but his legs were shaped like goats. The hair on them was glossy black, and instead of feet, he had goat's hoofs. He also had a tail, but Lucy did not notice this at first because it was nutty, cut up over the arm that held the umbrella so as to keep from trailing in the snow. He had a red wooden muffin around his neck, and his skin was rather reddish too. He had a strange but pleasant little face with a short painted beard with curly hair, and out of the hair there stuck two horns, one in each side of his forehead. One of his hands, as I have seen, held an umbrella in the either arm. He cried survival several brown paper word right now. What with the yeah, I'm sorry. In the snow, it looked just as if he had been doing his Christmas shopping. He, as if uh, was a fawn, and when he saw Lucy, he gave each a was short of surprise that he dropped all of his notes. Goodness gracious me, except the fawn.